Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Peyton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule, and Mizzou football has its biggest game of the season upcoming. The Tigers have been killing it, obviously, all year, and now they're playing LSU in a game where they are stunningly ranked ahead of the Bayou Bengals, who they're welcoming in on Saturday. Huge game, obviously. So we had to bring back an expert, our favorite expert, friend of the show. It's PFF's Max Chadwick, host of the Preferred Walk-On show as well. I would say best non-Mizzou related college football show out there. Although with how much Luther Burden they've been talking about, I guess it is a Mizzou football show at this point. But Max, welcome back first and foremost. And my first question is, how many meatball subs have you had since we talked last?
Dude, I don't think any, man. Honestly, I'm trying to cut back a little bit. I'm not going cold turkey or anything like that, but I'm trying to cut back a little bit and try to eat healthier a little bit. Because as you guys know, during football season, it's impossible like to maintain a healthy lifestyle really in the field that we're in. So I'm trying to cut back a little bit, but I now that you mention it, now I'm starting to crave it a little bit too. So maybe I will hit up Subway after this. And,
I introed you as the meatball guy per our last encounter. So I mean, I think you gotta live up to that name. But yeah, so welcome back, obviously, and just diving into it on the Missouri side first. We've listened to some of your show, and obviously, you've talked about some of these guys, but just being the college football expert that you are, knowing and kind of the big landscape of stuff. What's your take on Mizzou's season so far, and how impressed have you been with their performances?
Oh, I've been blown away, man. I think what they've done so far this season has been fantastic. I mean, you can make the argument before the season started that Eli Drinkwitz was starting to get a little bit on the hot seat. His seat was definitely getting a little warmer with just being an average coach really for his first 4 seasons, I believe, right before this season. So he was kind of an average coach. Now all of a sudden they're 5-0, man. They're number 21 in the country. I have them number 17 in the country right now. I think they're even too low in the AP poll. But even number 21, that's their highest ranking in 8 years. So this is a great Missouri team right now. They're 5-0 for the first time in a decade as well. So this is a really good team, man. And that offense with Kirby Moore, the new offensive coordinator, who we on the most recent show when we previewed this game, Dalton and I both talked about Kirby Moore and how great of an impact he's had, and he could be a head coach down the line, honestly, with how amazing he's been as an offensive coordinator. Brady Cook looks like a completely new quarterback from what he showed a year ago, and that receiving core, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a little bit, is loaded, man. So, yeah, I mean, Missouri is a really good team. They got a good secondary and a good linebacker core as well. The offensive line's playing phenomenal. This is a sneaky team, and I think deserves to be in the top 20, and they're right now number 21.
Obviously, the focus is going to be, as you mentioned, the receiving core, particularly Luther Burden. I know you've sang his praises a ton on Twitter. I mean, Luther Burden, we expected a big jump, I think, out of him, just becoming the bona fide guy, moving into the slot. But, what's your take on him so far? Because, it's just kind of been – he's surpassed even our lofty expectations, and he's arguably been the most impactful receiver in the country.
Oh, I think he has been. And, before the season started, remember last year, Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't win the Biletnikoff Award, which was a crime, in my opinion. So going into this year, I was like, okay, he's pretty much a shoo-in, in my opinion, to win the Biletnikoff this year because he didn't last year. Right now, Luther Burden's your Biletnikoff Award winner, man. He has been the best receiver in college football. It's just a true sophomore. Leads all receivers in the country in overall grade. 92.1 grade. He has the most receiving yards in the country at 641, most yards after the catch in the Power 5 with 400 as well. He has been, I keep comparing him to Deebo Samuel. I mean, you put the ball in his hands, he's going to break tackles and make something happen. He's a good route runner too. He's a good deep receiver as well. It's not like he's just a short and intermediate weapon. Luther Burden III, in my opinion, has been the best receiver in college football, and you guys are fortunate enough that he's only a true sophomore. He has to come back to school next season, and I think he'll be the number one receiver in next year's draft. And it was a little early to be talking about the 2025 NFL draft, but if you're looking for who some of the top prospects are already for next year's draft, Luther Burden III, in my opinion, is clearly the number one receiver, and he's been the best receiver in the country so far this season.
We talked about this in our last episode about the uptick in just usage. Through 12 games last year, he had 45 receptions. Through 5 games this year, he's at 43. The carries have gone away. It's more of just seeing him in the passing game. What are some of those factors? We talked about getting an OC, Dominic Lovett leaving for Georgia. I mean, his second year in the SEC, what's really just stood out about Luther Burden? What's contributing to just more success than last year?
Yeah, I think it starts with, honestly, just his development. I mean, last year, you could look at his stats from last year and how he's taken a jump this year. And it's like, wow, he really has become a whole new player. And it's like, yeah, because, he was a true freshman last year, so no matter how highly rated you are coming out of high school, it is always hard, difficult to make an impact as a true freshman, especially in the SEC. He was a guy that was a number 3 overall recruit coming out of high school. This isn't some guy who just came out of nowhere. This is a guy that Missouri fans were very, very excited about. Probably the highest rated recruit since maybe Dorial Green Beckham. I mean, you guys can probably correct me on that if there's anyone else that came up, but I think he's the highest rated recruit since then. And they obviously have a defensive lineman coming in next year who should be really, really fun as well. But yeah, man, Luther Burden, I think it's just development that he just developed into one of the best receivers in the country as a sophomore. You always kind of see these sophomore jumps from the superstars. It's very rare that you see a guy come in as a true freshman and dominate like Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence did. It's rare, but he's really developed as a sophomore and is going to be even scarier as a junior, man. He's, like I said, he's going to be the best receiver in the country heading into next season because he is the best receiver in the country this year. But I also think Kirby Moore has also done a really good job of utilizing Luther Burden III in a lot of different ways. And also Brady Cook has taken a jump as well. So all those factors kind of married into one and made Luther Burden III, in my opinion, the number one receiver in college football right now.
I want to segue off that a bit because you mentioned Brady Cook and, obviously the guy, throwing Luther Burden the ball and the jump he's made. I mean, we had just before we started recording, he won the Manning Award of this week. He had a 91.1 PFF grade that you guys gave to him for his performance against Vandy. I was thinking about this and maybe dumb question, but just, first of all, I want your thoughts on Brady Cook in general, but I was thinking about the SEC and just the quarterbacks there. How many SEC teams right now would not trade their quarterback for Brady Cook?
Oh, good question. Because he is balling right now, man. I got to think about that for a second. Honestly, it sounds weird. I think Jalen Moreau has really turned it on recently. So I would say he's probably a guy that Alabama would stick with. But you look at the other schools right now, Carson Beck's played really well. I think he's a really good quarterback. Spencer Rattler has been kind of up and down, but I think they would stick with him. Jayden Daniels, I think, has been by far the best quarterback in the SEC this season. So I think LSU would stick with him. So I'm looking at it right now. I'm trying to think maybe that's a good question. I think there are definitely there's definitely some teams that could use an upgrade. I think Ole Miss will stick with their quarterback. I think Arkansas will stick with their quarterback in KJ Jefferson, Ole Miss with Jackson Dart. But I think Mississippi State would take him because Will Rogers has not looked very good at all. A&M is an interesting one because they're on their backup for the rest of the season, but Max Johnson's also looked really good. Yeah, Tennessee might honestly take Brady Cook, man. Joe Milton III has been so up and down so far this season. So I think he might be the starter there. He might be the starter at Florida with Graham Mertz. Kentucky's an interesting one too because Devin Leary's not great. So that might be another one. So yeah, there's only a few SEC schools that I would say Brady Cook wouldn't start at, which is funny because I remember when I went on the show in the preseason and you guys were talking to me about the potential of, the backups to maybe take over this job for Missouri. So now that we're talking about Brady Cook, I mean, it really, as one of the top quarterbacks in the conference, it really shows how good he's been. And right now he is the 5th highest graded quarterback in the SEC right now. So he has been phenomenal. I mean, last year he was 94th in the country in passing grade. Now he's 17th in the country in passing grade. And my co-host Dalton actually pointed this out. I think before this season, he had like 19 big-time throws and 20 turnover-worthy plays in his career. This year, he has 11 big-time throws and 2 turnover-worthy plays. So he is making great throws down the field, not putting the ball in harm's way. When in his past, what he's done has been not making great throws downfield and still putting the ball in harm's way. So he has become a radically different quarterback, and he's definitely one of the most improved quarterbacks that we've seen so far this season.
Yeah, and you've touched on it before. I mean, with Luther Burden just absolutely skyrocketing, Brady Cook improving so much. You've touched on Kirby Moore. One thing he's also done, he's been able to get just so many other weapons involved while keeping Luther Burden the bona fide number one. You mentioned you think maybe Kirby Moore could be a head coach one day, but I'm just curious, what is it that he's changed about Missouri's offense that you think has worked so well, and do you think it'll really continue into the future?
Yeah, I think it will, and I think there's a few receivers that they have at Missouri that he's done a really good job of utilizing them. And Theo Weiss, obviously coming in, who has been a really, really good transfer from Oklahoma. He's been playing well. Mookie Cooper is there as well. Cody Schrader's been pretty good running back this year as well. So I think what he's done, and my co-host Dalton again did a really good breakdown of this, is more the X's and O's guy than I am, but he said it is a lot like the Sean McVay offense, where it's like it's not very complicated scheme wise, but what makes it special is that they're running very efficient plays from a lot of different alignments. So you're not seeing, it's not just one play that you say, okay, they're lining up in this fashion, we know what's coming. He's lining up in different fashions and still getting to those, highly efficient plays. So he's done a really good job of drawing up the offense. It helps when you have a superstar receiver in Luther Burden III. But if you're looking for one of the biggest reasons why I think Brady Cook has become the quarterback he is this year, I think it is Kirby Moore. And I think, Luther Burden, I would say, is just a flat out superstar. And like, now it's definitely helped that he's got a really good offensive coordinator. It's definitely helped that his quarterback is a lot more consistent. But he's always going to be a superstar. But Brady Cook, that has really been the big factor for him, is that he has a great offensive coordinator now who's putting him in a position to succeed. And he's got a great receiving core that's also putting him in a position to succeed. And the offensive line has really played well too, with Javon Foster leading the way. So, yeah, I think that offense really is humming right now. And LSU could be scared, man, because they got some definite problems, especially on the back end of that defense.
I'm glad you brought up a little bit earlier about when last time you were on here, we talked about like Sam Horn and how he could maybe take over at quarterback. We didn't really think that Brady Cook would make these jumps. He's surprised everyone. He has really grown as a quarterback, as a leader. I even remember joking, why isn't he on your podcast yet? When are we going to see him interview with you? And one of the guys you've interviewed is facing the Tigers this weekend, in Jayden Daniels. Yeah. What can we really know about him and kind of learn about his game? And you mentioned him. He's the best quarterback in the SEC right now.
Dude, he is being robbed by his team of being a top Heisman candidate. He has been a fantastic quarterback so far this season. The problem is that it's kind of the Drake May effect, where it's like the UNC team just around him isn't good enough. The LSU team around him, at least defensively, is not good enough. They have so many problems. But Jayden Daniels, last year, in his career at Arizona State, he was a really good runner. He was a terrible passer, especially in the pocket. Like, he was awful. So when he transferred to LSU, I was saying, okay, like, I don't know how much I'm, buying stock into this working out. To his credit, last year he became a great passer, and he still was a great runner too. But he became a really good passer, especially like when he's on the move and stuff. This year, he's taken another jump where he has become an excellent pocket passer for LSU. And he's one of the best, most accurate quarterbacks throwing the deep ball. And he's got that amazing receiving core that he's got right now in Malik Neighbors, who is on fire. I mean, if you're looking for the Biletnikoff, two of the Blitnikoff finalists, they're probably playing in this game in terms of Luther Burden III and Malik Neighbors. Like, they are both playing outstanding. Not only him, but Brian Thomas, too, is playing lights out football, too, at receiver for them. So he has two receivers that you guys are definitely going to have to, keep an eye on in this game. But Jayden Daniels is getting the ball downfield, and he is really – I've been blown away by his development from a guy who really just was a really good runner but really couldn't hack it as a passer last year. Improved as a passer, but still was mostly great because of his rushing ability. This year, he can run the ball when he needs to, of course, but he's become one of the best pocket passers in the country. So his development from his time at Arizona State to now has been unbelievable, in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, he's a great kid. You can check out the interview I did with him as well. He should be one of the top Heisman candidates. It's unfortunate that he really isn't right now, and they're not really in the playoff picture because they've already had 2 losses so far this season. So, it's unfortunate for him that his defense is kind of letting him down, but he is, don't get me wrong, he has still been one of the best quarterbacks in college football so far this season.
And I don't know if you know this, Max, but Jayden Daniels came to Mizzou 2 years ago when he entered the transfer portal at Arizona State. There was a lot of belief that he was coming to Mizzou to compete with Brady Cook for that starting job before the 2022 season. He actually, I didn't know about this, learned this a bit later, that sometimes players do sign letters of intent for the places they visit, just in case they do actually commit to there and they can go there. And someone saw that he did sign one, but he ended up going to LSU instead. So now those 2 quarterbacks, 2 of the best in the SEC, facing off this weekend.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to, because I did ask him in the interview. Hold on, let me see. I did ask him in the interview. I always love asking people who transfer to school. There's like, hey, can you break the hearts of another school? Like, what school would you have gone to if he didn't go to LSU? And Oklahoma. Okay, so you said Oklahoma would have been the school that he would have gone to if he didn't go to LSU. So that was his number 2. But that is I actually did not know that at Missouri. He didn't mention that at all. But that is interesting that it was one of the schools that he was looking at. But yeah, when I talked to him and I asked him, like, can you break the hearts of another school, he did tell me Oklahoma would have been the school he would have ended up at if he didn't go to LSU.
Even though Oklahoma's not yet in the SEC, I think that would have been more upsetting to Mizzou fans, given the historic rivalry if he had gone there instead of LSU. But yeah, you also literally answered my next question, which was going to be how can, or I guess, talking about the firepower of LSU, but I'll get to this. I guess, you mentioned Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. We know about Daniels, and what I've learned also from this past week since Saturday is that their defense is just that bad. But for Mizzou's defense, I mean, this was coming into the season, I think, a unit that we expected to sort of carry the load for, how good and determine really how good this team is going to be. And it's sort of flipped the other way. At the start of the season, this defense has still been rock solid overall. I mean, Chris Abrams-Drain he's gone 3 games in a row with an interception. But just, how can Mizzou's defense slow down this LSU, particularly passing attack, and do enough to help its own offense out on Saturday?
Yeah, I think Missouri is in a decent position. I don't think they're going to slow down LSU. I think this game's going to be a shootout, honestly, if you're asking me. But I do think in a shootout, Missouri might be better equipped with the secondary that they have. Because like you mentioned, Chris Abrams-Drain has been phenomenal so far this season. You mentioned 3 games in a row with a pick. He's an 87.8 coverage grade so far this season. He has been great. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. has also played really well so far this season. So they have a good secondary. And I ranked Missouri as one of the top 10 secondaries in the country entering the season. So they have a good secondary. Is it going to hold up against Jayden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., which are probably one of the best trios in terms of passing attacks in college football? No, it's not going to straight up stop them. They're not going to score 14 points on Missouri. They're going to score a lot of points. But Missouri has a better chance, I think, of being more efficient against LSU because, like I said before, LSU's secondary is really in a tough spot right now. And unfortunately, one of the worst news to come out of the week was one of LSU's starting safeties, Greg Brooks, unfortunately just developed cancer, so he's going to be out for a while. So obviously all prayers to him. But as another member, one of your star players in an already struggling secondary that isn't going to be able to play. So I think that Missouri will be able to do better because they have the secondary that's playing really well. The linebacker unit has been a little disappointing. I'm not going to lie. That was kind of one that I was really high on entering the season. Tyron Hopper was a guy I loved. He only has a 57.1 grade so far this season. So yeah, he hasn't really played that well, and I'm blanking on the other linebacker that I liked a lot too, but he hasn't. Oh, Chad Bailey, right? Chad Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
He been out? I haven't paid much attention, but I don't see him too much.
He missed the first 2 games straight up with an injury, and they've been working him back in slowly, and it's been Chuck Hicks for most of the season next to Hopper.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I don't even see him in our database in terms of getting. Oh, Chad Bailey actually on the snaps he's played, which is about 100. He actually has an 86.8 grade, so he has actually played really well. So hopefully, he will be back for them in this game. But yeah, I love the linebacker unit. I love the secondary Missouri has. The defensive line is fine, but I think Darius Robinson has really played well for the Tigers this year. I think they're more equipped to handle a shootout a little bit better than LSU, whereas LSU it really is going to be a struggle for them to really get pressure on Brady Cook with that offensive line playing well, and then slowing down those receivers that Brady Cook can throw to as well. So I think I think Missouri's secondary is probably better equipped than LSU's to handle, even though I would take the trio of Daniels, Neighbors, and Brian Thomas. I would take that trio over Brady Cook, Luther Bird, and Theo Weiss. But I just think Missouri's secondary is a lot better than LSU's, and I think that's why I think it's a little bit of a better matchup.
They might be more well equipped to make that last ditch stop when it matters. Makes sense.
Sounds similar to another Mizzou LSU game in the past. But you mentioned Mizzou's O-line there, and it kind of tracks with what I think we've talked about. When they're not committing penalties, it has been a much improved unit in keeping Brady Cook upright. Even run blocking, it seems like it's improved. Connor Tollison, I know in particular, has graded out pretty well at center, which is surprising to me just based off what he was last year. But, I mean, what has really gone right for this Mizzou O-line? Has it really just been a collective improvement? I know you mentioned Javon Foster is just really rock solid left tackle, but I mean, who else has really stood out on that line?
Yeah, so Foster is one of the big ones. Right now, he's the third highest graded tackle, I believe, at least in the Power 5. He's right now third in the Power 5 with an 85.3 grade, and great in run blocking, great in pass protection. So it has an 80-plus grade in both aspects. Like you mentioned, Connor Tollison, man, has really stepped up, and he's been one of the best centers probably in the country so far this season. He's currently second among Power 5 centers in overall grade this season. Not a great pass blocker still, but he is really dominant in the run game. So he's played really well. And yeah, man, I mean, Missouri's offensive line has really stepped up. And I think you have, an All-American candidate in Javon Foster at left tackle. You have another All-American candidate in Connor Tollison at center in terms of how he's playing so far this season. Xavier Delgado has played well. Armand Membu has played well. Even Cameron Johnson has a 65-plus grade. So all 5 starters on the offensive line have graded above a 65. And I think offensive line, receiving core is one where you want superstars. You want Luther Burden III instead of just, average to above average receivers. You really want a superstar and then, have average to, maybe even below average receivers to complement him. Offensive line is one where you kind of want average to above average across the board instead of superstars. And Missouri's lucky that they have that. They have above average players across the board. And they also have right now 2 stars in Javon Foster and Connor Tollison. So this offensive line, I think, has been one of the best in college football so far this season. I think a big part of it is just that none of them have really looked out of place and none of them have really struggled so far this season. All 5 of them, like I said, are 65 plus in our grading system right now. So yeah, the offensive line is playing really well and giving Brady Cook and those running backs a lot of holes and giving Brady Cook a lot of time to throw the ball too.
For those that might not know a lot about, the grading at PFF, is 65 just more of like the average for any offensive lineman? And I mean, what is like that elite number that you're seeing?
Yeah, the elite number is like 85 plus, like you're a stud. Like that's really, and when you get into the 90s, like then you're a really, really star player. So even in the 80s, you're a great player. 70s, like I would say you're an above average player. And then 65 plus is like, okay, like that's starter worthy, basically. So yeah, I mean, the fact that all of them are starter worthy and the fact that none of them are struggling. I mean, like I said, there's 2 guys who have an 80 plus grade. So 2 guys who are studs. Then you have another 2 guys in Delgado and Membu who are 70+ grades so far this season, which are like above average. And then you got Cameron Johnson with a 66.2 grade. That's fine. Like that's an average like offensive lineman. So those are pretty much the all 5 of them. And the fact that there hasn't been a below average player in that offensive line says a lot and shows how much they're dominating right now.
Another question just came to mind for me is Mekhi Wingo. I mean, he transferred from Mizzou after his freshman season. I don't know how much you know about Mekhi. I don't know if a lot of Mizzou fans really, want to know anything more about it, but I kind of want to know, like, what can he, do to this offensive line? What can he test from his position?
Yeah,
it's a revenge game.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, he actually, I think I had him in my top 10 defensive tackles entering the season. He has been really good so far. He has an 80.4 grade. He has really been one of the star players on this defensive line for LSU. And a lot of people thought Mason Smith would be the guy that you have to keep an eye on, but Mason Smith's really not played too well. And he's a guy who a lot of people think could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft because of how freaky he is. But Mekhi Wingo has been the better player. He's a really good run defender. He's a really good pass rusher too. He's kind of an all-around stud for LSU. So, yeah, it could be a tough matchup but like I said, Connor Tollison has done really well, at least to the run game. So that'll be a fun matchup to watch. But, Mekhi Wingo might have the advantage on him when it comes to passing down. So he's definitely a defensive lineman that Missouri fans should be keeping an eye on, even though he did leave Missouri a couple of years ago.
Is the Kenny asked about the PFF grading? Is there something that factors in for centers who occasionally snap the ball to their quarterback when they're looking at the sideline? Because Connor Tollison, for as good as he's been, still has done that like a few times. Because they'll do like a fake cadence, and Brady Cook will be looking the other way and clap, and Connor Tollison it's made our hearts drop when we've watched. But
I will say we do look at everything. I don't know if that goes into the grading, but if Brady does fumble the ball, I don't know if that would be charged to him or not. Like if it's a bad snap, it gets charged to the center for sure. But if it just hits him in the chest when he's not looking, that might still be charged to the center. We do look at everything. We try to be as perfect as possible. Look, the grades are not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say they are, but we try to be as perfect as possible and look at every single factor in every play. But that might be a factor in why his pass protection grade is a little bit lower than his run blocking grade right now.
No, the grading system's awesome. I think for Connor Tollison, you might just have to do the eye test yourself. For him. I'm gonna put that out there.
Right.
But that'll be obviously an interesting matchup with him and Mekhi Wingo. This isn't even a question, really, Max, but I'll just let you on our show if you want to continue to sing any praise you have about Harrison Mevis. The floor is yours. We hadn't spoken since obviously the big kick against Kansas State, and he still has not been bad since then. He sent one off the scaffolding at Vandy, so that was pretty funny. Had a nice construction site kick, but there you go. You can just sing any praise you'd like.
No, I appreciate it, man. And I talked to you guys before this that I was appreciative of that you guys sent out the clip of me singing his praises because I thought he was one of the best kickers in the country, and it looked pretty good when he kicked. What was it, 63 yards, 64 yards? Well,
61.
Okay, so it was an insane kick, but longest in SEC history. He's been kind of up and down though. I'm not gonna lie, like he hasn't really played as well as that kick would indicate. He's missed 2 extra points so far this season. He's 7 for 10 on field goals, and I'm looking at right now. He hasn't really played as well as I would have hoped. But I missed 1 extra point, and 3 field goals. So a little bit up and down, but he does have an absolute, cannon of a leg, and he's played well, man. So I mean, we'll see. Well, hopefully he gets a little more consistent because he does have a huge leg. It's just the accuracy is not all the way there, but he's got the leg strength to be an NFL kicker down the line. It's just about whether or not he can, be more consistent, which he hasn't really been so far this season.
Peyton, one thing I'm going to jump in here about the Harrison Mevis question is that you talked a little bit about the snap and, watching every single play. At the beginning of the season, there was like some questions about the holding on the field goals. There were some issues with the snaps as well. Is that something you kind of factor in if the ball's a little wobbly and they're almost kicking it just off the ground instead of just upright?
Yeah, we do have long snapping grades. We do have holding grades. I think
That's
that's why you
awesome.
literally grade every player and every play in every game. So
Okay.
that does play a part. I mean, I don't envy those people that have to grade
I was
the
gonna
long
say,
snapping and the whole.
You got to be an ultimate football guy to just
You
watch
have
all
to be,
that
dude.
film
It's
and grade
almost
that.
insane. And we like it's not just Joe Schmo's grading this. Like, I don't grade any
Yeah.
of it. We have people that are trained by like our punting grades are like NFL punters like trained our guys to like what we should be looking for, and like offensive line the same way. Like, hey, this is what you should be looking. So it's not perfect. We don't know the scheme, which plays a lot of the part too. But we have a good idea based off all the teaching that former players have given us, and a lot of other people have given us too, former coaches as well. So we do grade long snappers, we do grade holders. I don't know how much goes into that, but we do grade them, so it would play a part too.
I'm sure that's music to Kenny's ears. He's the long snapper and holder.
Big special teams
expert
fan.
on the
Love long
field.
snappers. Underrated position.
It is.
But hey, they're important. I just one more question for me. Now that you've seen how Mizzou has played through 5 games, and obviously it was the easier part of their schedule, what would you maybe predict this Mizzou team to kind of finish at? Like, not even necessarily a record prediction, but like maybe what's the ceiling for this team? Is it like just a pretty decent bowl game? Do they have New Year's Six potential? What is your kind of ceiling that you would place on Mizzou?
That's a good question. Ceiling wise, I know they play Georgia later on. I do think they're beating LSU this weekend. So I think that's a win for them, and I think they're going to go 6-0. I think they're probably, and they got Kentucky after that at Kentucky. I like Kentucky a lot. I would say they're probably going to lose 3 games if I had to predict. So they go 9-3. I would probably say 3 games. So 9-3. So I would say 9-3. Worst case, I mean, not worst case, but I think if you're making a prediction right now, maybe 8-4. Like maybe they slip up a couple times, but I still think 8-4, 9-3. Like that's a great record for them, man, compared to what they've been in the past. So, I would say probably 9-3, and 9-3 team, probably top 15-20 team in the country at the end of the season. Probably not a New Year's Six bowl team, but they are probably going to get a really, really good non-New Year's Six bowl out of it for how good they've been this season.
I can guarantee if you told Mizzou fans 8-4, 9-3 preseason, any one of them would have taken that all the way. So definitely not a bad one. Kenny, you something?
My last question here. It's kind of a fun one. Don't feel bad if you don't know any of these names I'm about to say, but we're a Brett Norfleet podcast. He's the freshman tight end for the Tigers. I mean, Mizzou hasn't had like a dominant tight end, a really well-known tight end since Albert O. But we like Brett Norfleet. We like Jordan Harris, who just came out of nowhere too. He really didn't start playing football until 2 years ago. One of the best blockers we've seen. What can you kind of tell us that the grades are saying about those guys?
Yeah, Norfleet. I'm looking at it right now. Norfleet's the highest grade tight end that you guys have right now, 67.8. He's not the starter, obviously, with Tyler Stevens there, but he is pretty clearly the highest graded one so far. So 72.6 receiving grade, decent blocker too. Man, he's an exciting player. And you said he's a true freshman, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's a good. I mean, he's playing well. So I mean, he had a great game against Kansas State. He's a good player, man. I'm excited for him to see what he could do in this the rest of his career, man. And like you said, they haven't really had a great tight end since Albert O. I'm not going to say Norfleet can be that guy, but he's a massive tight end. He's like 6'7", 235. So he's a fun player to watch for sure, man, with that size he's got there. And I mean, with him and Luther Burden next year, I'm not sure if Brady Cook has any eligibility left after this season, but that could be a fun duo that they can have next year.
I think he has one more year because he's technically a year younger than the 3 of us. So I think this would be like his senior season because he is an SEC graduate, but I think he still has one more year because he graduated early.
The COVID year and the red shirt stuff.
It never makes sense. We don't even know. Does he know?
I mean, there's he might end up like the Miami kid who's going to be there for a 9th season or whatever.
Dude,
the hell I saw.
I would be a 7th year guy right now. I'm very excited to finally remove all the class of 2020 recruits because then it's like finally we can get back to normal because so many 6-year seniors still. We're gonna have still 6-year seniors for the next couple of years, probably. So yeah, it is kind of the COVID stuff has really screwed everything up. But yeah, man, I'm excited for Norfleet for sure, though.
Yeah, we are big supporters. We saw him make like one catch and we were hooked. The last question I just have for you, Max, on that kind of more general note, I do just want to get your take. Like, we're obviously a Mizzou driven, podcast, but we love football. We love college football. And college football has been, just awesome this season. Yeah. And, I guess I'll frame this, maybe like one or two teams that you're just like really loving so far, maybe back into get to the playoff, maybe outside of like the Georgia, Michigan, and then a couple teams maybe in that tier as well of the rankings who like you think maybe will end up a disappointment or have been a disappointment so far for this year.
Yeah, so I think outside of Georgia and Michigan, I think Texas is in a really good spot. I think Oklahoma is also in a really good spot. I think the winner of that game this weekend has every chance in the world to run the table and make the college football playoff. So this is a huge Red River rivalry game that we're getting on Saturday, because the winner of that game is the clear favorite to win the Big 12. These are the only two ranked Big 12 teams right now. And then also to win the Big 12, run the table, and make the college football playoff. So this is a huge game. I'm big fans of both teams. I have both of them in my top 10. Florida State scared me a lot. I had them in my number 4 team in the preseason. They have scared me a little bit with that run defense, but I still think they're going to be good enough to get in. Pac-12's looked awesome, man. I think no matter who wins the Pac-12 this year should definitely get into the college football playoff, because I think that is definitely the best conference by far in college football this year, which is unfortunate that they're dying after this year.
It's funny.
It's so awful, man. But so anyone in the Pac-12 I think should be in the playoff, whoever comes out of that conference. If you're looking for a team that I'm not buying, I'm gonna say the team that I've grown up a fan of my entire life. I don't believe in Penn State this year, man. I don't. I think this is a team that has serious issues on offense. The run game has been non-existent because the offensive line can't get any push in the run game. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton are one of the best running back duos in the country. They can't do anything with the blocking that they're getting from the offensive line. And Olu Fashanu has every chance to be a top 5 pick, and he's been probably the best pass blocker in the country this year. He's still not a good run blocker. And the rest of this offensive line is not really good in pass or run blocking. So that's a problem. The receiving core is a big problem as well. They're lucky that Drew Aller's a stud. Like, they're lucky that he's kind of like Drake May, where it's like the offense is just not helping him out really at all. But he's been so good that it stayed afloat. But once you start playing the Ohio States and Michigans, man, teams that have great defenses but also can score on you, because really Penn State's played really good defenses in Illinois and Iowa. But it's just like they can't score. So it's like it can't be a game when they can't score. But once you start playing those teams, man, there are a lot of people that are still buying Penn State as a national championship contender. I don't see it at all, man. I don't think this offense is going to be good enough to get into the college football playoff. I think it's another 10-2 season for Penn State, rather than one that finally leads to the Final Four.
Wow, that's harsh words. I mean, yeah, that's your team. I mean,
I know.
Drew Larry
leads. My heart, man.
He leads I saw a stat today. He leads the country in like completions or attempts without a pick or something. And
he's been awesome. They can't get open though, and I'm afraid of when they finally play Michigan and Ohio State. Like they could get. And the defense has been awesome. Yeah. But I want to. Defense right now looks like the best defense in college football. But you got to remember they're playing Illinois, Iowa. Delaware. Like, it has been easy, like the easiest schedule we could have. And they play UMass next week after this bye week. So they're going to look phenomenal next week, and everyone's going to like, wow, they're going to beat Ohio State. And then I think it's going to be a wake-up reality check for them. So I think I'm actually going to that Ohio State game. I'm very excited. I'm going to be sitting hopefully in the press box, and I'll do my best not to be cheering, because I'm sure, as you guys know, it is very
number one rule.
There's number one rule is not to cheer in the press box.
Number one rule.
But yeah, man, I don't buy Penn State as a college football playoff team this year. But I can be proven wrong. Maybe they fix it. Maybe Drew Aller is just that good. And the defense stays fantastic. But the rest of the offense besides Drew Aller, man, really scares me. So that's one team that I would say I'm not buying. And USC, their defense too. I'm even though I picked them to go to the playoff before the season started, that defense scares the hell out of me, man. And I don't know if they're gonna be able to run the table and make it to the college football playoff with that defense, even though their offense is probably the best in the country.
Yeah, we that hurts. I mean, I'm sure that hurts to say, but hopefully they prove you wrong. I mean,
Hopefully,
I guess for your sake. It was cracking me up though, because I saw that Drew Lar stat and the Brady Cook Mizzou accounts were in the replies calling him check down Drew because Brady has the SEC record for the most pass attempts without a pick and that he got that against Vandy. So that was funny. Only other thing on that note, I know me and Peyton, big Washington fans. We want Washington to go far. I like
believe in that offense, especially.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They have the defense that USC wants, where it's just be good enough. They're a good enough defense. USC has an atrocious defense. USC's defense has been basically an average defense in terms of the national landscape, but they've also played a super easy schedule. So when USC, they got Notre Dame next week. And they obviously play Washington and Oregon, two great offenses. That's going to be a wake-up call for them. And you already saw Colorado put up 41 points on them this past weekend. So
yeah,
Washington has an amazing offense with the coaching staff, with Penix, who might be the Heisman favorite right now, with that receiving core, and the defense is good enough. Oregon, amazing offense as well. And their defense is more than good enough. It's actually been a really great defense so far this season. So they're another school that I think has a great shot at it too. But yeah, Washington, man, they have all the chances in the world, and really it comes down to next weekend. I mean, I'm excited for that Oregon game they got. That's a huge game. That's going to be probably one of the best games of the season.
Yeah, I'm pumped for that one. It was a thriller last year, if I remember right.
It was.
So yeah, that's going to be awesome. We're just excited, and we're very glad Mizzou is in the mix with just being fun and having a good year. But yeah, I mean, college football is awesome, and we're looking forward to Mizzou LSU. Max, thank you very much for coming. We'll let you go maybe enjoy a meatball sub now that I put it in your brain. But
I might, dude. I'm getting hungry now. I haven't had lunch yet, so I might.
I heard my stomach growl during this, so I might have to figure out what I'm at for lunch. Also, credit to you. Me and Peyton usually just bring it up when Kenny's dogs go wild in the background. So credit to you for just bracing through it.
I didn't even hear it, man. So
yeah,
okay.
I did mute myself for about 10 minutes there. I couldn't talk or do anything.
We did an interview.
They have
yesterday.
takes.
Yeah, we did an interview yesterday. But I'm not going to say who it was. I don't want to embarrass them. But we had an interview yesterday, and the person's dogs were going crazy during it. And it was almost we had to stop at some point. They had to take care of it. But it was bad. So this was, I'm already used to that in the last couple of days. So this was nothing really.
They get takes. They have takes. They just want,
they do. They for sure.
You heard. All right. Well, Max, thank you so much. We'll have you back on, definitely sometime soon for sure. When Caleb Williams is a Bear, you can do a one-on-one with Peyton about why he might help them win one game, maybe.
They got to fix everything else first, man. I mean, they are as a train wreck right now. What's going on in Chicago? But I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Thanks, Max. Take care.